we are meeting here today at the height of the euro crisis. And it's a crisis that's affecting all of us and also has very far-reaching implications for the Roma. Now, it's an issue that I'm personally very much involved in, both the Roma issue and the euro crisis. And I can tell you about the situation that the euro is here to stay for the very simple reason that actually we can't do without it. People think, well, should we have the euro or should we not? That's not a question that can be asked today, because the euro exists and the assets and liabilities of the various countries are so intermixed on the basis of the common currency that if it were to break up, the financial system would just simply collapse. We would have a collapse, the like of which we have not actually seen. It would exceed of what happened in the Great Depression in the 1930s. So the euro is here to stay. However, the implications, both economic and political, are rather dismal. When you had a similar crisis in the past, in 1982, you had the collapse of the sovereign debt boom of the 1970s, and Latin America suffered a decade, a lost decade. And in Japan, when you had a similar situation in 1987, the real estate boom collapsed and the banking crisis, and Japan still hasn't recovered from it. Since 1987, there has been no growth in Japan. That's now more than 2 decades. So that's a very dismal economic forecast. And the political implications are also very negative, because first of all, the European Union is now divided into creditor countries and debtor countries, and their interests are in conflict. And to be forced to live together, when you are forced to do it, it doesn't lead to a very happy marriage. So there is a great deal of resentment, rise of xenophobia, and the Roma are actually one of the worst affected by this. And at the same time, I think that paradoxically, the Roma problem could play a positive role in the future of the European Union, because to break this rather dismal tendency, we have to recapture the positive, the ideal that the European Union represented in the past. It's now in the process of being lost, and it's very important to recapture it. And actually, dealing with the Roma issue, the European Union can play a very, and must play a very important positive role. now that the Union has accepted, has recognized that there is a problem that it has to address, it is now a very positive influence in dealing with it, because in the individual countries where the Roma live or where they migrate to, they encounter a lot of hostility. There's a very negative stereotype that prevails, and the national authorities very often respond to this popular attitude and are not very helpful in dealing with the Roma issue. And actually, the European Union, and that is the Commission and the Parliament, have become, in my opinion, the major positive force in dealing with the issue. As you know, I have a network of foundations that have taken up this issue from the inception more than 20 years ago, and I can tell you that the development of a European framework, the fact that it's now taken up by the Commission and the Parliament has brought a very positive. It is the major positive force working. The structural funds play a very important role. Now, the problem is actually getting worse, and the intervention is not all that effective. It's very difficult for a bureaucracy to deal with a problem, particularly when it doesn't get support in the countries themselves. And well, you have got very important financial resources available from the structural funds. They are not being used. For instance, in Romania, only about 3%, little more than 3% of the funds available to Romania are actually being utilized. So this has to be addressed, and I'm really very, very pleased that it is being discussed, that we are discussing it today, and we will continue it. The next budget cycle will play a very important role, where I think you have to impose some conditionality on the use of the structural funds, but at the same time you have to provide positive support to make sure to help both the Roma community and the local authorities to actually utilize the funds and to overcome the obstacles that stand in the way. The establishment of the Roma platform is a very important part. And on the part of the foundation, we will do our utmost to help this process. Actually, we have a rather large program called Making the Most of the Structural Funds. And I hope that the Commission will also work to make the most of those structural funds. We established a decade of Roma inclusion, and that actually already provides the platform that the European Union wants to utilize. And I think it brings the Roma community is actively involved, and it also brings in the candidate countries which have large Roma populations into the Decade organization. That also creates bureaucratic problems, because it's difficult to integrate the accession countries into a process that is taking place within the Union. But I'm very pleased that actually all the Decade countries, that includes the accession countries, have been invited to the forthcoming meeting of the platform. Having been involved in this issue for more than 20 years, we know what needs to be done. There is a positive solution to the Roma problem. It does revolve mainly around education, and of course combined with healthcare and housing and so on. But in 20 years, we have succeeded in educating a new Roma elite, people who have finished high school, university, and they break the hostile stereotype that prevails, because there's a very peculiar problem that the Roma face. There are quite a lot of Roma who individually advance in society, but because of the hostility, it is understandable that they actually disappear as Roma. And since they don't meet the stereotype, they can disappear. They can cease to be Roma, but the stereotype remains. But when you have educated Roma who can argue the case, their own case, and continue to be Roma, that breaks the stereotype. So we do now have the beginnings of a Roma elite that will provide leadership for the Roma community. The task is to do it on a larger scale. And unfortunately, the task is growing as fast as the effort can be scaled up. I would particularly draw your attention to the Roma Education Fund, which has been working on this for 20 years, has the techniques, the mentoring, the individual attention, the Roma Versitas, which brings together Roma who are going to universities and provides a college for them where they establish their own community as well. So all these things exist, but not on the scale which is necessary. So I think it's easier to scale something up than to invent a method of dealing with it. So I'm hopeful that progress can be made, and that it really could not be made without the European Union and the European Parliament. Thank you.